14 seconds. That's how long a single misstep at a royal banquet takes to become a headline. Princess Catherine knows this, reportedly better than anyone in the room. Every time she takes her seat at a state dinner, surrounded by crystal stemware, gold-rimmed charger plates, and guests whose every glance carries diplomatic weight, she isn't just eating. She's performing a kind of theatre most people never see. One fork lifted at the wrong angle, one bite taken before the signal, one napkin placed carelessly on the table instead of the chair. The cameras catch it all, and by morning, the photos circulate with captions that read like verdicts. What you're about to hear isn't a list of table manners. This is the invisible rulebook that reportedly governs every royal meal. The unspoken code Princess Catherine follows under chandeliers and watchful eyes, where even the way she breaks bread sends a message to diplomats, journalists, and anyone paying attention. Sources close to palace operations describe it as one of the most demanding performances in royal life, a test that repeats with every state banquet, every diplomatic dinner, every formal gathering where a wrong move doesn't just embarrass Catherine, it embarrasses the crown. And it starts with the one detail most people overlook entirely: her phone. The moment Princess Catherine takes her seat at a formal dinner, her phone essentially stops existing. No quick glance at the screen, no subtle check under the table, no device placed face down beside the bread plate. According to sources familiar with royal protocol, even the appearance of distraction carries consequences, because in a room filled with ambassadors and heads of state, a wandering eye reads as disrespect. The illusion of complete attention must remain unbroken from the moment she sits until the final guest departs. That's when the posture takes over. Insiders describe it as effortless, but the mechanics are precise: shoulders relaxed but not slumped, back straight without rigidity, elbows kept clear of the table's edge. Catherine reportedly maintains this composure through courses that can stretch past 2 hours, and she does it while holding conversation, managing cutlery, and tracking the rhythm of the entire room. The elbow rule carries more weight than most realise. According to those who've attended formal dinners, keeping arms close prevents accidental collisions with glassware, maintains clean sightlines across the table, and projects calm rather than chaos. Slouching reads as boredom to the person speaking. Leaning too far forward reads as over-eager, even aggressive. None of this happens by chance. Her seat is assigned long before she arrives, placed according to diplomatic hierarchy, logistical flow, and strategic pairings that palace staff have calibrated for weeks. There are no swapped place cards, no quiet requests to sit closer to a friend, no sliding down a chair to improve the view. Catherine follows the seating chart without hesitation, and she makes it look like her idea. If gloves are part of the dress code, they come off the moment she settles in and the meal begins. Elegant for arrivals, impractical for eating. The transition happens quickly and quietly. Napkin moved to lap, gloves set aside discreetly rather than bunched on the table, hands free for what comes next. That's the setup. The real test starts when the first course lands. At a royal banquet, the cutlery arrangement isn't decoration, it's a map, and Catherine reportedly reads it without a second glance. The outermost knife, fork, and spoon correspond to the first course. Each new dish means moving one step inward, a system designed to eliminate hesitation and keep the table pristine. Multiple glasses follow a similar logic, positioned in order for water, white wine, red wine, and champagne for toasts. One insider described it as silent choreography. No clinking of uncertainty, no grabbing the wrong utensil, no recovery gestures that draw attention. Catherine moves through the setting like she's done it 1,000 times, because according to those close to the palace, she has. The fork itself carries its own protocol. Traditional British dining style keeps the tines facing down, not scooping, but guiding food onto the back of the fork with the knife. It looks unnatural to outsiders, almost theatrical, but reportedly it keeps bites controlled and movements minimal. This matters when photographers sit 30 feet away with telephoto lenses, capturing every lift of the hand. When Catherine speaks during a meal, her cutlery stays on the plate. No pointing with a fork, no waving a knife mid-sentence, no gestures that turn silverware into props. Sources say this rule exists partly for optics and partly for instinct, because under bright lights and formal pressure, a lifted blade reads as aggressive even when the conversation is light. And when she finishes a course, the signal is unmistakable. Knife and fork placed together on the plate, handles angled to the right, blades facing inward, positioned so staff can clear without asking and without interrupting conversation. One untidy plate can slow the entire service rhythm in a room with dozens of guests, and Catherine's placement reportedly never wavers. The cutlery tells a story. She controls every word of it. Timing at a royal dinner isn't personal, it's collective. Catherine doesn't begin eating just because her plate arrived. She waits for the host's cue, that subtle signal that releases the table to lift their forks in unison. The same discipline applies to toasts, rising at the appropriate moment, lifting the glass at the right beat, keeping the gesture controlled without stealing focus from the guest of honour. Once the meal begins, pacing becomes its own performance. According to insiders, Catherine matches the speed of the room, eating slowly enough to appear composed but quickly enough to avoid holding up service. Finishing too early draws attention. Finishing too late disrupts the flow. The target, reportedly, is synchronization with the guests nearest her, so courses clear smoothly, and no one notices the mechanics behind the elegance. A former staff member allegedly described it as eating to a clock that doesn't exist. Catherine finishes each course within a window that matches the room's natural pace, and she does it while maintaining conversation, managing her cutlery, and tracking the progress of surrounding plates. None of this shows on her face. The composure looks effortless, precisely because the effort stays hidden. If something needs passing, bread, butter, condiments, she prioritizes the people beside her before taking her own. Reaching across the table is never an option. Catherine doesn't stretch past plates or glassware to grab something out of range, because reaching looks chaotic and risks knocking a glass. The rule is simple: ask quietly, let the item travel, and wait rather than lunging. Bread arrives at nearly every formal dinner, and most people fail the test without realizing it. Catherine, according to sources, never picks up a roll and bites into it directly. The protocol calls for breaking off a small piece, buttering that piece alone, and eating it before breaking another. It prevents crumbs, keeps the rhythm elegant, and avoids the image of a future queen gnawing on bread like it's a sandwich. The butter knife has its own protocol. It touches the bread piece only, never the whole roll. Butter goes on the small torn portion, not the entire surface, and the tearing happens over the bread plate, not the main setting, so crumbs fall where they belong instead of scattering across the tablecloth. Soup carries its own choreography. Small spoonfuls, scooped by moving the spoon away from the body, tilted toward the far edge of the bowl as the liquid runs low. No slurping, no scraping sounds, no lifting the bowl to chase the last drops. In a room full of cameras, soup reportedly functions less as a course and more as a manners examination. Dessert offers no relief. Soft puddings, layered creams, delicate pastries, all handled with the designated dessert cutlery, usually a spoon and fork working together. Catherine keeps her bites small, her movements controlled, and her expression calm. Even if the dessert is extraordinary, she won't look like she's battling it. The final course demands the same discipline as the first, because insiders say the cameras keep rolling until the last plate clears. The napkin stays on her lap throughout the meal, used only for light dabs, never dramatic wipes. If she leaves the table briefly, it goes on the chair, folded loosely so the setting still looks composed. Sources say this single detail separates those who understand formal dining from those who merely survived it. At a formal dinner, Catherine doesn't talk to just one person. She rotates, engaging the guest on her right for a stretch, then shifting to the guest on her left, so nobody spends the evening watching her talk past them. The rhythm feels natural from the outside, like she's simply being friendly, but insiders describe it as carefully tracked awareness. The goal is warmth without dominance. Catherine asks questions that flatter. She keeps topics light and positive. She steers away from anything that might turn the table tense. Loud storytelling is out. Cutting people off is out. Oversharing is out. Her role, reportedly, is presence without pressure, contributing enough to keep the energy alive without overwhelming the people around her. One source described it as hosting without being the host, making guests feel seen while never pulling focus from the actual guest of honor. Catherine contributes. She listens. She never takes over. And through all of this, the physical performance continues. Chewing stays silent. Mouth stays closed while eating. No speaking mid-bite. No leaning over the plate. No rushing through food to make a point. These sound like obvious rules, but according to insiders, the pressure of a state dinner makes obvious mistakes surprisingly easy. The cameras never blink. The guests always notice. That's when the oldest rule takes over, the one most people have heard whispers about. When the monarch signals the meal is finished, the table follows. Historically, this meant setting down your fork regardless of what remained on your plate, because the sovereign's timing dictated everyone else's. Some royal watchers describe it as a tradition that quietly persists, though it isn't always confirmed on the record. Either way, Catherine's approach remains the same. Eat steadily, stay aware of the room, and never get caught mid-bite when the atmosphere shifts. The survival strategy sounds simple. The pressure behind it is anything but. By the time the final course clears, Catherine has navigated a performance most people will never fully see. Every fork placement, every glance, every controlled bite existed inside a system designed centuries ago and refined for cameras that didn't exist when the rules were written. The room empties slowly. Guests rise according to protocol, farewells exchanged in measured tones. Catherine moves through the departure sequence with the same precision she brought to the bread basket. What stays behind is the silence of a perfectly cleared table. Charger plates stacked and lifted. Crystal stemware returned to service carts. Linen still holding the creases of a meal that lasted hours but will be remembered in photographs lasting seconds. Those photographs never show the weight of it. They capture a woman in an elegant gown, smiling beside diplomats, fork positioned just so. They don't capture the 14-second margin between grace and headline. They don't capture the years of training compressed into a single glance at a misplaced knife. They don't capture the split-second adjustments when a guest speaks too long, when a course arrives too fast, when the king's hand moves toward a fork earlier than expected. And they don't capture the quiet truth that insiders describe but rarely say aloud. At a royal table, the smallest habits are the loudest signals. A torn torn piece of bread speaks, a tilted soup bowl speaks, a napkin on the chair instead of the table speaks. Catherine has learned to control every syllable. The cameras see composure, the protocol sees compliance. But somewhere between the first course and the final toast, what the room actually witnessed was a masterclass in invisible discipline, performed under chandeliers, surrounded by crystal and candlelight, and never once acknowledged out loud. The guests have gone, the chandeliers dim, and the rules remain exactly where Catherine left them, followed perfectly, noticed by almost no one, and ready to repeat at the next state banquet, where the same 14-second margin waits again. That's the life inside the frame, and reportedly, she wouldn't trade it for anything.